William Cullen Bryant, Thanatopsis, Summary and Analysis, To A Waterfowl, Summary and Analysis. Hello and welcome to the Discourse. We are discussing the early American writers who represented American Romanticism, and one of the important names that needs to be mentioned is that of William Cullen Bryant. He was an influential American poet and a newspaper editor of the New York Evening Post. Bryant took birth on 3rd of November 1794 and he died on 12th June 1878. His first published poem was Thanatopsis, which remains a landmark. Thanatopsis was first published in 1817. Thanatopsis, Summary and Analysis. The title of this poem is made of two Greek words, thanatos, which means death, and opsis, which means view or sight. So the literal meaning of the title of this poem is View of Death. The major theme of this poem is death. The poet keeps talking about death and presenting it in vivid colors. The poet is explaining the inevitability of death and is preparing the readers to not to fear or worry about the death. The poem is written in iambic pentameter with 5 datum feet per line. The poem is written with no rhyme in blank verse. The poem begins with an idyllic scene in which the beauty of nature itself is depicting the joyous life. Suddenly, the fear of death engulfs the poet's mind like a blight or disease. These thoughts of the last bitter hour, of the moments immediately before death, will cause anyone to shudder and grow sick at heart. The poet then suggests that death is the end which all will meet. Even the emperors and princes couldn't avoid the death. Gradually, the poet begins to make reader accept death as a natural process and to not to fear it. The most important thing about this poem is its anti-Christian stoical view of death. There is no heaven or hell beyond the grave. Death ends life, and that is all. Thine individual being shalt thou go, to mix forever with the elements, to be a brother to the insensible rock and to the sluggish clod. Another important theme of the poem is unity with the nature. Through death, the poet suggests that human is nothing but a part of the nature, and death actually mixes the human again with the nature. As the poet says, dying entails the loss of each human trace, as well as surrendering up thine individual being to mix forever with the elements. In the end, the poet suggests that people should not worry about death, rather they should enjoy the life, because death is the end and nothing remains after death. People should have an unfaltering trust in death, viewing it as a destiny rather than a curse. Another poet who wrote extensively about death was Emily Dickinson, whom we have already discussed. The anti-Christian view of death of this poem was so fresh that another American poet, Richard Henry Dana Sr., when first saw the rough draft of this poem, he said, "No one on this side of the Atlantic is capable of writing such verses." To A Waterfowl, Summary and Analysis. Bryant came in influence of English poets William Wordsworth and Samuel Coleridge, and his views about death were changed a bit in his other poem, To A Waterfowl. This poem was published in 1818. In his first poem, which was Thanatopsis, Bryant ignored the concept of God, heaven or hell. But in his second poem, he ably incorporated the idea of God as a power guiding every living being. The poem reflects American Romanticism and celebrates nature and God immersed within the nature. This poem is written in iambic trimeter and iambic pentameter. Which poem? The To A Waterfowl. It is written in iambic trimeter and iambic pentameter, and it consists of 8 stanzas of 4 lines each. Bryant used alliteration, metaphor, anaphora, apostrophe and personification as major figures of speeches in this poem. The poet observes a flying waterfowl, a common American bird, going away in a direction and asks the waterfowl, where is it going? He asks the motive of waterfowl going away and warns that the bird may face danger in its flight as it is not safe traveling alone. Soon the poet realizes that the waterfowl is not alone, rather an able power is guiding the bird and safekeeping it. The waterfowl disappears as it flies away, and the poet starts thinking about his own life. He realizes that the God is guiding his life too. His idea that God was guiding the waterfowl becomes strong, and he realizes that the waterfowl had complete faith in God. This strengthens the faith of the poet, and he is assured that God will guide him too, just like the waterfowl. So, through his observance in nature, the poet finds his faith in God. This poem gained a huge success, and Matthew Arnold, the English poet, was so impressed by this poem that he commented, "It is the best short poem in language." Poet and critic Richard Wilbur called A Waterfowl as the America's first flawless poem. George du Maurier mentioned this poem in his own writing Peter Ibbotson, in which the narrator calls To A Waterfowl as the most beautiful poem in the world. So this was all about William Cullen Bryant and his two amazing poems Thanatopsis and To A Waterfowl. We will now begin the Victorian age of American literature in our next video. Stay connected with the discourse. Thanks and regards.